Hello, everyone. This is John from RPGs and More. And in today's video, I wanted to take a little bit of a dive into how magic is handled in the both implied setting and the system of the Prince Valiant storytelling game. What's really interesting about this is there are not very many rules, so I don't actually have to reference directly the rule book very much at all. So I'm going to set that aside for right now. But what I can say is a good beverage makes a big difference. Wise words from someone. I don't know who. Anyway, what I can say is this. Magic in the Prince Valiant storytelling game is very much a combination of two things. First, superstition and paranoia. So a lot of people can be superstitious about, well, for example, horseshoes and luck and giving luck, and how you face the horseshoe on the wall tends to dictate whether or not the luck is there or it runs out, or all these things have. So that is a form of magic in a sense, and in that it can work for those who believe in it. But does it make any difference in the long run? Hard to tell. What's interesting is in the Prince Valiant role-playing or storytelling game, it's kind of the same way. There's a lot of superstition that you can get involved with of, that person over there is a troll. And are they really a troll as we understand it in the fantasy world of, under a bridge and goopy and weird and resistant to fire? No, they're really not. They're probably a very rough living person that hates other people and probably, bashes their head in with a rock first chance they get if someone tries to come onto their land. Sorry, I just kicked the stand there. And a lot of people start avoiding them and calling them a name, calling them a troll, calling them an ogre, calling them whatever they might come up with in order to make themselves feel better about not, getting along with this person, by not having this person be a part of their community. But in reality, when it comes down to your character's going to go and drive the troll away, it's a person. And so they're driving a person away. And so there's no special abilities. There's no, weirdness about it. They just have to face off with the person. But the fun thing is the character may not know that going in. Sorry, my cat's playing with the recycling. So I'm going to have to clean that up when we're done. You handsome boy. And that's something that's explored in the Prince Valiant system. In the Prince Valiant plot by Hal Foster, is the perceptions of us as humans tend to dictate what is a monster and what is a person, a member of the community. And it tends to be the people who are members of the community, upstanding members of the community, that tend to, live in accordance with what is expected and bring value to the community, tend to be highly valued, and they're considered great people, whereas those people that live on the fringes of the community or make decisions that are not necessarily supported by the rest of the community tend to be ostracized in some way and tend to be seen as beastly or monstrous or other. And it's sometimes, if it goes on long enough, there can even be a mystical thing added to them. So where you get like the wise woman or the cunning man could be someone who just knows a lot, but because they know a lot and they're really smart, they can't keep their mouth shut and keep telling everybody else all the things that they're doing wrong, or the way that they're mistreating their relatives, or whatever it is. and therefore they get a little, they like, oh, that person must be a witch, they know too much, or that person must be a troll of some kind, or whatever reasoning people want to give. So you can use that in your game as a cool kind of, it's, I wouldn't call it a lesson. It is more of an illustration of the fact that sometimes the worst monsters or the best monsters are humans ourselves. So that's one half of the magic, and like all the magical things that they do are actually explained by science. And in the comic strip, that's exemplified by Merlin, because Merlin does have magical powers, like real magical powers, but the majority of the time, everything that Merlin does in the series is explained by a modern understanding of science. We're talking astronomy to predict eclipses. We're talking an understanding of material science in order to create certain effects, and that will, benefit King Arthur or Prince Valiant or whoever Merlin is helping at the time, sometimes even himself. And that's kind of a cool thing. But the other part about this is there is actual real magic in the Prince Valiant storytelling game and in the Prince Valiant setting. It's rare, it's powerful, but it's not flashy in the sense of lightning bolts and fireballs and, fogs of death and all this. It's not like that. What it tends to be is more influential, psychological. The magic, for example, I think there was a great example given in the book. Morgan Le Fay can summon demons, and they can be demons from hell if you want to flavor it that way in your own campaign, or to stay with what Al Foster did, or if you want to do it some other way, that's fine. But they're summoning these creatures from another world, and these creatures of death and darkness and despair and destruction, she can send them to torment her enemies and make their lives terrible, but especially in the land of dreams. And that's kind of where her influence is she can touch people in the land of dreams, and to a certain extent she can influence them in the real world using those abilities, using those powers. But she's not throwing a lightning bolt at them. Right? She's not throwing a fireball. She's not, I'm going to stop time. That's not what she does. She is influencing people to make them want to do what she wants them to do. Kind of like an enchantress or an enchanter, or an illusionist, kind of a combination of enchantment and illusion for the D&D skills. And she and Merlin can have a battle against each other and fight things through with this magic that influences the mind, and whoever manages to win is going to be able to influence the other. um, and that's kind of a neat thing. But in the realm of the player characters, you're not going to learn magic. All right, you're not going to learn spells. There aren't any spells in the Prince Valiant setting. It is something that storytellers can use as an enhancement to their villains, to make their villains more compelling, to make their villains capable of doing things that require an adventurer to take care of. Excuse me. But and sometimes, for the allies of the adventurers as well, but it's always in the hand of the non-player characters, and that's a very important point. What the players might get their hands on is some very limited magical items. Now, specifically, there are only two magical items, as far as I'm remembering, that are mentioned by name, and that is the Singing Sword and Excalibur. But there is the mention of the possibility of magical weapons. Your character's finding some magical sword somewhere, or maybe even having one imbued and to become magical by a priest or a magician or someone else, a druid perhaps. And those are interesting because, okay, so a standard weapon that's purpose built, good at what it does, provides a +1 to your die pool. A magical weapon provides a +2 to your die pool. And then Excalibur, or the Singing Sword, provide a +3, as well as other enhancements. For example, the Singing Sword can only be wielded or only lends its strength to someone who is fighting in a just cause. So, for example, if you take out the Singing Sword, if you somehow get it away from Prince Valiant, or Arn, and decide to use it to slaughter the younglings at the Jedi Temple, suddenly that sword's not going to be so powerful and magical, and it'll still be a chunk of metal. You'll still be able to do stuff with it, but you're not going to have the benefit of the Singing Sword special ability. I kind of like that. It's an added little something to give it flavor. In this case, a limitation. Your character always must make sure that what they are doing is just, and the storyteller can have fun with that by tempting you into doing unjust acts, or putting a scenario where it's kind of like, it doesn't matter what you choose, maybe there's no good answer, although you don't want to do that too many times, because this is sort of a lighter, more comic book style system and implied setting, but giving them the opportunity to choose the just or the unjust thing, and the unjust thing might be really easy, whereas the just thing is a lot harder. And maybe the just thing can't be accomplished without the help of something like the Singing Sword, but it will require greater risk, and therefore it's worthwhile. You get the bonus, but you also have to make the choice to actually take the action and take the risk. With Excalibur, there's other things, like, for example, I think it says it can give you a +2 to your die pool for leadership purposes, for leading an army, because there's mass combat rules in this game, and they're kind of cool. We'll go over that in another video, I'm sure, once I've figured out all the ins and outs of them. And so, using those as an example, you can actually come up with really cool things for magical, I wouldn't even just call it magical weapons. You can have other magical items, basically, that have different abilities. But the key here is they would need to be subtle. Like, again, no fireballs, no lightning bolts, no sleep spell necessarily, or maybe you could get away with like a limited sleep spell. That one I might allow that one. Maybe some sort of influence. It's an influence based thing. It's kind of like an enchantment based thing. You making someone feel sleepy, as long as maybe they don't realize you're casting it on them or something. I don't know. I'll think about that. But other options that could be given, you're not going to get light, for example, but you might be able to do something like influence and charm. And as long as you wear this girdle of shininess, you get a +1 or a +2 to your etiquette rolls or tosses, and in order to or your courtly mannerisms, and your glamour in order to influence people. That could be a cool item. But then give it some sort of stipulation, like it can only be worn by people of a certain culture. That could be one limitation, or it can only be excuse me. It can only be worn with a cream dress or a cream tunic, or some other, like something that gives it a limitation, so it's not a free lunch. So your players have to think about it a little bit, even just a little bit, and you can have fun with that. Another option would be uses of like potions and salves. Again, you're kind of veering towards a little bit to the magical there, but it's also a little bit explained by alchemy too. So you could have like a healing salve that, makes you heal. It's not going to heal you right away, but it's going to increase the body's natural healing capability, and that might be kind of a neat little thing to throw in. So there are options to make magic items work. The key point is they have to be subtle, and they have to be um, small. I would say I would make them something that could be also chalked up to just superstition, like a lucky horseshoe. Um, and then you can have fun with that, and that's kind of neat. So that's how magic generally works. Again, no spells, subtle of items in the hands of the players, and only the rare uh, NPCs should actually have access to real magical powers. Whereas you could meet a whole lot of charlatans or people who are just really smart and know how to trick others, for good or ill. And you could run into a whole lot of those characters. You could run a whole lot into superstition and assumptions. And that might explain monsters as well. So, oh, that is monsters. Let's talk about monsters for a second. So, in the initial run of Prince Valiant, when it was first coming out, the Hal Foster is on record as stating that he felt that the world of Prince Valiant was going to be filled with strange, monstrous beasts and dinosaurs from before time and things like that, and then slowly kind of veered away from that as the story began to tell itself, and he grew more comfortable in the setting and realized that those things were not as important. But in the beginning, you had like a, a dragon that was actually a giant alligator, or there was a swamp monster that was kind of looked like a stegosaurus to me. Um, and there's a bunch of other things that you can throw in. So in your world of Prince Valiant and the Knights of the Round Table, you could certainly kind of have fun with that and go a little ham and have monsters that are large, rodents of unusual size. Why not? Giant centipedes, sure, they could possibly exist somewhere. A an alligator that's the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. Um, sure, yeah, that you can work that in, though it's kind of already there in a way. Um, and also something that's just out of place. For example, what would the average medieval uh, European peasant think of an elephant if it suddenly came rampaging towards them because it escaped some nobleman's private zoo? Um, or giraffes, or zebras, or anything you can think of. Like, you can really kind of have fun by having monsters be things that actually exist in our world and just kind of play with them a little bit. Um, and that's where I would go with a lot of this. I think where the value of this systems and the implied setting is the fact that your protagonists and antagonists are predominantly human. Magic is present. Magic is not, it doesn't not exist, but it's not the thing that is fueling everything. The thing that fuels the story, the thing that drives us forward is human hubris, human ambition, human traits, good and bad, that kind of guide us towards our destinies or our dooms. And magic is just a piece of the puzzle along the way towards that doom. Thank you very much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, I would appreciate a like and maybe a subscribe. If you did not, that's okay. I understand and I respect your time. And either way, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much, and peace be with you. Bye-bye.